We interrupt your regularly scheduled programming to bring you this special notice.
Smooth Productions.
And thank you for listening. This is the second episode of the Gentleman's Hall podcast, and I'm Walter, Smooth Gentleman, Notebook, wherever you really feel like calling me on that day is who I am. Yeah, and this is my project, and I'm seeing if I'm going to stick with the podcast and keep doing that forward. Just want to give this a little bit of a test drive, so to say, and that's why we're here again. Second episode, and I guess this week was quite interesting to say the least with everything that's going on. We're going to go through a couple of things in the time that we have, some serious topics, and I'm going to end up with a little bit of a lighter subject because in life we all need a little bit of lightheartedness at times. Some words of wisdom. What is that? So yeah, words of wisdom from the smooth gentleman Walter Yeates. That is me. So, where do we start off with this week? There's been some catastrophic news that wasn't needed to be news, but when President Donald Trump decided that the United States would recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel several days ago, it's definitely started off some problems within the Middle East, to say the least, causing a lot of outcry against the United States, not just within the Middle East, but in Europe as well, because of the situation surrounding Jerusalem. And I believe it was last year I did some reporting on some of the tension in Israel, Palestine, and over how Palestinian human rights and the situation going on there, and how all the Palestinians are connected to Hamas. But that's drastically unfair characterization of what is going on. And there are definitely a lot of human rights abuses that have been recognized by nations across the world. But one of Israel's biggest allies on the international stage is the United States, and there's definitely nothing wrong with Israel. There are definitely a lot of moderates and progressives in Israel that don't exactly like the path Benjamin Netanyahu is taking, but there are definitely hard right Zionists in Israel. Zionism is not the same thing as being Jewish, which is also something that gets mischaracterized a lot for some reason. But yeah, there's definitely some issues with this, and there's definitely started days of rage, which is extremely unfortunate. This did not need to happen. There's a reason why, even with a lot of the favoritism that the United States has given Israel in the region, that no other president has decided to do this. I mean, just the last president, Barack Obama, was criticized heavily because he dared to challenge Netanyahu and Israel on certain issues while still making them the highest recipient of foreign aid of any nation in the world. So that's how strong the Israeli lobby is in the United States, while organizations like J Street are ignored, but AIPAC is not. So that point that out, and I just think it's unfortunate. A lot of people have been talking. There's racist sentiments saying that this move will lead to violence. I actually object that, because it will lead to violence. That doesn't mean all the violence is going to resonate from the Arab community. If you look into the situation, there's been a lot of targeted violence coming from Israelis toward the Palestinians for years and years, whether it's cutting off the water supply or just all these other things that you can read about. A great outlet, in my opinion, that covers everything in the Middle East and the situation in Israel and Palestine extremely well is Middle East Eye. I believe it's Middle East Eye, not Middle Eastern Eye, but yeah, Middle East Eye, they do a great job of reporting these issues. Al Jazeera also covers things as well, heavily in depth, a lot more than United States-based outlets do. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of problems there, a lot of fallout around who was pushing Donald Trump in that direction. Evidently, a lot of people in his administration staff were against him, from Madison, Tillerson, were like, no, this is a horrible idea. At least they're going to make this decision. We should make sure security measures are up to par. President Trump was even warned that this could be another Benghazi, which anyone who's paid any attention to United States elections or just the United States period over the past 30 years would understand the controversy around Benghazi, what happened there, what didn't happen there, and how that was politicized a lot more than all other attacks at embassies throughout the past 30 years. So, if that happens, there's no way to look at anything else other than this decision because it's completely unnecessary. No, I'm not saying that you should give whoever commits an act of violence a pass, but this is completely avoidable. There's no reason to make this move, and I've seen 2 reports come out that Sheldon Adelson, a Vegas-based donor to Donald Trump, pushed him in this direction, and also, surprisingly / unsurprisingly, Chuck Schumer, the minority leader in the Senate, pushed Donald Trump in this direction to probably also appease Chuck Schumer's donors, because Schumer is one of the corporate Democrats. It's a name they don't like, but when you take that much corporate money and listen to your donors over the will of the people, you kind of earn that recognition as being a corporate donor, a corporate individual. I mean, it's what you are. He also has neoliberal economic policies or tendencies to lean towards that way as well, again, based off the donors. So Chuck Schumer making this decision, or trying to push Donald Trump in this decision and aiding in this decision, should not be forgot. But yes, that's something that's gone on that is definitely something to look forward to in the upcoming weeks and months to see if it actually comes to pass. Hopefully, it doesn't happen and the embassy isn't moved from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. That would be awful. But even just saying the United States officially recognizes Jerusalem as the Israeli capital is bad enough, and also want to say as to why there's claims to if Israel even has the rights to the land there, because as almost everything in that area, there's a lot of arguments around who actually has the rights to the area. The international community doesn't recognize Israel's stake to all that land, but as you've seen, Benjamin Netanyahu government in Israel doesn't really care too much about that, as the quote-unquote settlements, which are really just cities built in Palestinian territory, continue to be built in West Bank. So, that's a little wrap-up of that just an unfortunate situation that came up this week, that didn't need to come up this week, but that seems to happen quite often since the Trump administration has begun. And again, something to watch. And moving forward just a little bit, there was also some big news, something I've talked about quite a bit, something I've covered quite a bit, something I've wrote about. Actually, was even asked to do a column about this, which we'll go into a little bit later at the end of the show. But Al Franken, Democratic senator from Minnesota, officially tendered his resignation earlier this week as well. This is what I wanted to talk about. This is, as I mentioned last week, that I'm doing a lot of interviews around this in the conversations around sexual harassment, sexual misconduct, sexual assault, and rape since the Harvey Weinstein bombshell dropped. All of that that's come out from it. I've been wanting to talk about that and get that out there more, and just to have a discussion, because it's an important discussion to have. And it's actually a draining discussion to have for reasons like I'm about to get into right now. It's, how to put this. There's a lot of individuals out there who recognize themselves as Democrats, who vote Democrats, some of which have been lifelong Democrats, who enjoy, I won't say, well, maybe enjoy is too strong a word there, but they like to defend Al Franken, and oddly just Al Franken. You don't hear much about John Conyers, who also recently tendered his resignation after this. You don't hear much about the Republican Congressman Franks, who just tendered his resignation, which a lot is still coming out about that. Trent Franks is his name. There's a lot coming out still about that, so I'm not going to comment any more on that, other than that he recently resigned as well, effective immediately due to some news that's coming out around offering evidently $5 million for a staff member of his to be his surrogate, and there's something more there, evidently. But going to on this Al Franken situation, a lot of Democrats, even from the center left, even to some progressives, are defending him completely. When I've read his press releases throughout the situation, I listened to his resignation speech, and it boggles my mind as to why so many people are jumping out to defend him, when if the common thread throughout all of this is that he doesn't even really defend himself fully. He's always been riding the fence as far as not saying he didn't do anything. And then I'll just take a personal example. A lot of people will be uncomfortable doing this, but I am not. If I was in his situation, and if I did not do what he said, or what he's accused of, my response would be, no, I did not do what it is that I'm accused of. Period. That's it. That's what I would say, and that's the message I would put out there. But Al Franken has been saying things like, that's not how I remember these events. That's not how I remember them. I'm so sorry for what I did. Or no, I'm so sorry for making these women feel that way. I'm like, that's your defense. Okay. That's fine. He immediately said that, yes, I'll stand for the ethics investigation. And I'll say I was never pushing for him to resign. I was like, okay, let's have the ethics investigation and get right down to it. The allegations have been vetted. I'm not in the community of anonymous sources aren't legitimate. That to me is just not an accurate statement to make. And it kind of misremembers some of the most important sources of all time in American journalism. Let's look at Deep Throat. Didn't know who he was for 40 years. All that was credible. There are reasons why people don't put their names on certain things, because it can threaten their lives, their jobs, and it can follow harassment, which is ironically what we've seen a lot in this situation as well. So I'm perfectly fine, for one, accepting anonymous sources for stories. I've done that already and been trying to work on one as well with anonymous sources. That's just a easy talking point for those who don't like what the story is about, to point at and say, oh, their sources aren't named. They can't be real if they're not named. That's nonsense. That's honestly nonsense. Anytime a journalist who actually cares about ethics, ironic tie in there, any journalist who honestly cares about ethics is going to vet the information, whether the person is on the record, on background, on deep background, or off the record. Going to do the same vetting process. regardless. Named sources really just makes everyone else feel better from different perspectives. Those who want to go attack them, dig up all the information of their private lives, and say that they quote unquote deserved it for whatever this is, or the people who just want to put a face to something to get that emotional attachment for themselves, which is still, I think, coming from an incorrect perspective, but that's more reasonable than the first one that I mentioned. So, yeah, some of these women that accused Al Franken of sexual misconduct were anonymous. A lot of them stated that they didn't want to put their names out there to affect their jobs, or because they witnessed how Leanne Tweeden was treated. And honestly, even if Leanne Tweeden was put up to it by Murdoch or any of those individuals on the right wing, since he did tweet about it early, does that make the accusations false? It doesn't actually at all. So, and that's only her case. There are 7 more cases, and a lot of people are poking at the last one, saying he just put his hand around someone's waist, and that individual wrote about that story themselves. That's a little different. And I will give credit to that. That's a little different. But I will say that to the rest of them, those were pretty straightforward stories, and not a lot of room to argue. Even Tweeden, there was the picture which people wanted to defend, and people wanted to dig up pictures of Leanne Tweeden, and showing that basically sex shaming her for taking sexualized pictures, because these are people on the left saying this. Center left, a lot of them, from that center left establishment corporate wing, and even some progressives I've seen, so-called progressives, they self-determine themselves as progressives, have also done this. And saying that, well, she must have wanted a sexual attention from men since she took these pictures, and insist, like, seriously, have we evolved none as a culture within the past, 60 years at all? Because that's some stuff you would hear in the 50s. Like, women must be modest. They must cover up to earn respect of men and potential husband. Like, what is that? Like, come on. Here is the honest truth about some of this situation I'm going to get into. 1. You should respect a woman, or man for that matter, it really doesn't matter, anyone who, how they choose to dress, if they choose to go into modeling, if they choose to go get into sex work, or if they choose to be a nun, or dress conservatively, you should respect them based on their character, not how they decide to dress, and how they decide to express their sexuality. Why is that so hard for people to understand? It doesn't matter if individuals on the right do it, and that doesn't make it any better. That's literally some of the issue that was with Hillary Clinton's campaigns. Like, at least we're not like Donald Trump. Wow, you're setting the bar that low for yourself that you're not Donald Trump. Or comparing it to this issue, well, at least he's not Roy Moore and he isn't accused of rape and sexual assault. Really? That's how you're going to treat the situation? Because, and I talked about this on an interview that's coming up in the next few days that I've done, that will be on Huffington Post, is that people react to different stimuli differently. And just because a person wasn't violently raped does not mean they weren't violated in a way, or their boundaries weren't crossed and that consent wasn't given for those actions. And it's not like Al Franken was doing this as a 12, 13-year-old boy who doesn't know any better. He was running for Senate, and I believe in some of the accusations he might have already been a senator. Seriously, what? And he didn't come out and strongly deny any of these claims. I didn't remember them completely. And I've had conversations where people were saying he was quote unquote forced out by the Senate Democrats, and there's no way he could have had an ethics investigation at all, which is completely 100% false. There is nothing in the Senate bylaws, I checked and read through, just because I kept hearing this, that says that he did not have the right to go through the ethics committee due to these actions. It doesn't matter if there were 10, 15, or 30 Senate Democrats saying he should step down. He did not have to. Hard stop, period. End of story. That's it. He did not have to. And there have been individuals who are saying that he may have been pushed out so the Senate Democrats can say, hey, we got rid of Franken. Hopefully now the voters in Alabama will vote for Doug Jones over Roy Moore because we did the right thing, which is, if that is the reason, for one, you should do it because it's the right thing. And two, that's insane logic. Literally don't have any connections to each other. Minnesota is not Alabama, at all, for the most part. So that would be also wrong, but it would also be wrong. It's 100% false to say that Al Franken could not have gone through the ethics committee if he had so chose. He did not have to resign by any law. He could have sat there and fought for his name to clear it, if he wanted. Now, there's no telling what deals he made in back rooms to step down now. Who knows? We won't know that. So I just wanted to point that out. And I also wanted to point out, I usually don't like doing this, but as a journalist who likes looking into things and likes studying people and seeing trends and seeing why these certain things are, there are a lot. I have interacted with a large number of male Democrats who are over the age of 50, we'll say 50, some even 60, who don't care about these sexual misconduct allegations coming from Democrats. They have been pointing to, it must be a lie, it's a conspiracy, there's no way it's true, it's not that bad. They should care more about the politics of the situation rather than doing the right thing. I'm like, whether that's because a lot of these individuals did something when they were younger that they aren't proud of. Well, I'm not saying rape or anything like that. Maybe some misconduct, because yes, the environment growing up, even for them, was even worse than it was for millennials of my age, as far as examples of don't treat women and others you are attracted to sexually, whether that's men, women, whatever, as sexual objects who don't have to give their consent for you to do things. Now, let's say some of them grab a few butts when they were in their teens and they feel guilt about that. A message to them, if they ever listen to this, is why don't you make up for that by actually doing the right thing now, rather than having this guilt and protecting someone who's admitted they did wrong, and just basically saying, I have actually changed and now understand why that is wrong. No one is perfect. That is fine, but to completely excuse these things for what you think is political reasons is ridiculous. Again, hard stop, period, ridiculous. Don't do that. And I don't know, I'm not saying it's been brought up to me that there have been cases of false accusations. That's true. One that's been brought up to me a couple of times is the Emmett Till. And yes, I recognize that. But I also recognize that an accusation is not the same thing as a criminal court proceeding. Entirely different things. Journalists are not jurors. Entirely different things. So I'm not saying any of these people should immediately be thrown in jail tomorrow. I'm just saying if these accusations are credible, they should be investigated And we shouldn't immediately move to attacking accusers and saying they're all lying, that they deserved it because of how they dressed, what they did for a career, or any of these moronic things that keep coming out. Yeah, so that's just what I wanted to talk about. That on that is a little bit more on that issue, because it's just it's not that hard to be consistent and care about what happens to individuals who have had to go through these issues. I'm not going to call them victims, because these people are beyond just what has happened to them. Their identity should not be that of victim, and so they have to live with that and be re-victimized all the time. No. There are people there are human beings who had something unfortunate happen to them. That is not who they are. But individuals who want to attack them and saying they shouldn't do this, when this is going to Terry Crews as well, is like, come on, it should be better than that. But we'll move on just a little bit now and go into another topic which has popped up a lot, and I'm guessing that this has a lot to do with Donald Trump being president, and when there's individuals out there, again on the left, who want to make some money off of that, because there's a lot of what I like to call pop-up propaganda sites popping up. These sites who claim to be journalistic in nature, but they're not. They don't have any ethics guidelines, really. They don't have an editor-in-chief with a journalist background who cares about ethics. Their sole purpose is, and a lot of them, from what I've seen, like nearly all of them currently, are to basically just push out establishment democratic agenda and propaganda without any question, and you're not allowed to question establishment democratic agenda without being talked down to or being censored. How do I know this? Well, I've been involved with two at this point, and it's a little hilarious what they're doing. Why are they doing this? For one, actually, if you want to get into the business side of it, they actually have really horrible models, especially with how saturated the market is and how people online are moving away from the establishment from a perspective point of view, and a lot of people, not all of them, are intelligent enough to see through it. I won't say anything more because I won't give them any more ideas how to make their propaganda better, but a lot of these sites come up and try to make money off of this. They get clicks. They, again, as usual, they don't pay writers well or pay anyone that has anything to do with it that well, but they keep popping these things up to make money and to just push the same agenda as 17,000 other sites that do the same exact thing. They're all fighting with each other, and they usually have names that tell you that they are coming from a perspective of, we're going to be a little bit of a propaganda pusher. And they usually have very bad headlines and all type of things like that, and it's just a little bit see-through. It's a little bit funny that they're not being transparent with what their goal is, and I just wish all these sites would just call themselves blogs and say that they're commentators, and stop trying to say that they are a group of journalists with journalistic integrity, when literally, if you speak to them about those things, they have absolutely no idea what any of those things are. And I'm not saying everyone involved in these things have to go through journalism school. That's probably preferred. I didn't. But it's not hard to have ethics and read about those ethics and journalistic ethics online. It really is not difficult to do. It's really not. Really not. I guarantee you it's not. But that's not what their goal is. And it's unfortunate that this happens, because what ends up happening is that they pay writers poorly and are on-screen talent poorly, and just a couple of people make a lot of money off of it, and they keep doing this and doing this and doing this, pretending that they're helping the country, but that's really not their concern. If they really wanted to help the country, they would appeal to the millions upon millions of independents, millennials and post-millennials that are up for grabs right now, as far as where they're going to lie politically in the next several years. But what do I know? I'm just a journalist that studied political science in school, and some philosophy, some psychology. I know intelligent people I've had conversations with that are really informed about these issues. But and yeah, no, that's some serious topics there. But yeah, that's kind of what happens when everything is going on. But I did want to take some time while we wrap up here at the end to talk about something that I did recently. Again, like as I mentioned before, I was approached by a small website, Only the Brand Survives, to write about pretty much to discuss these issues that are going on, or about sexual improprieties and whatnot, and write a column about it. And I have starting late November, and the latest of that series just came out. And it was pretty much how to make sure you can have a smooth first date. And I just think it's kind of interesting to talk about that for a moment, just to have a little lighthearted thing. And since we've been having so much serious talk, and I did promise this when I started this podcast that we're going to have some fun talk, and I think that's fun. Me personally, as far as going on our first date, I also wrote about this before in Elite Daily a bit. To me, it's really fun because I actually feel more comfortable in a one-on-one conversation setting than I do in a group conversation setting. I love public speaking, but it might sound a little bit egotistical, but in group speaking, I'm the only one talking, so you're not trying to listen to different conversations and give every single person the attention they deserve. So you have to bounce things off and keep up with everything. And I try to analyze what people are saying and respond in an intellectual way that shows that I actually care about, what they have to say. Because I do enjoy that. And that's why I enjoy first dates, like talking, because a lot of it is talking. A lot of people get nervous and whatnot. I love talking, as you can see in the podcast alone, talking for over 30 minutes straight. I'm not bothered by it. But I especially like having intellectual conversations where, believe it or not, you're not always going to agree with someone. I actually like that, because when someone is open to be disagreed with, you can have some very good back and forth and actually learn something. Learning is good. We need to do more learning as a species, not just as Americans or citizens of the United States, but as a species, we need to be open to more learning and hearing different ideas that aren't hateful and violate human rights and treat others as lesser. None of that stuff. That stuff can go away. That stuff is, I'm not saying you have to tolerate that. It shouldn't be tolerated, but as far as just disagreeing on certain things, or different outlooks, different movie tastes, different sports teams you like, different books you like, different genres of books you like, and all those kinds of things that you can have an intelligent conversation on. Who's your favorite philosophers? I'm sure not. I'll have you out there probably talking about favorite philosopher in the first date, but just a lot of different things, even some materialistic things, like where you like to shop and stuff. I mean, have fun at some point in your life and don't be stressed about everything. Personally, I've been stressed a lot lately, writing about what I've been writing about. And I just think it's interesting because a lot of people, especially now, are worried about how to approach the situation. I even read, I guess, a thread that was talking about how if you go in for a kiss and someone turns their head, did you just commit sexual misconduct? Answer is no. If they turn their head and you accept that and don't get aggressive and try to force it upon them, only thing that you're guilty of is reading a situation real wrong. And that's perfectly fine. It doesn't mean they hate you or not interested anymore. And I did write some section about that in the article. These articles aren't all that long. I'll even post the link to it at the bottom. The articles aren't all that long, about 700 words. I could write more, but that's what they kind of asked for. But this just means you read a situation wrong. That's fine. Maybe they didn't want to kiss on the first date. I mean, that's just fine. And yes, I'm trying to be gender neutral because gender and sex neutral because yes, while the numbers are a lot lesser, men can definitely be also victims of sexual misconduct. Again, as the cruise situation points out, and also men can also be abused by women as well. Again, not as high numbers as men to women violence, but still, it does happen, and those individuals with those stories are still very relevant. We should listen to them as well. This is a cultural issue that we have to fix. It's definitely a cultural thing that it can be reversed. It's not you're born to be like this. I reject that notion completely. And since I was a Marco Rubio reference, I should take a sip of water right now. The political minded will get that. But anyway, but yeah, I just think you can still have fun and talk. Just consent is an important thing. Verbal consent is the best way, and enthusiastic consent is the consent you should always be shooting for. Maybe one day I'll talk about the different levels of consent, but I'm trying to keep things lighthearted. But different levels of consent. If you're more comfortable with straight asking, or do that. If you don't, I might ruin a situation for parties. Best to be on the conservative side or wait to see if they make a move or give you some kind of hint that, again, you can definitely read wrong. But as long as you're respectful after you've been told that was too much, you're fine. Just don't do anything stupid like grabbing things and you think that's okay. Like, come on. Be intelligent. Obviously. But yeah. These type of situations are fun. Going out, just talking, hanging out with a person that you're attracted to, whether you're straight, gay, bisexual, whatever. Just going out and enjoying something with someone whose company you enjoy is fun. And it should be something that shouldn't have a lot of stress to it, but I guess some part about it is entertaining because of the stress aspect, because you actually care what they think. So I mean, guess, yeah, that's part of fun. Me personally, I do like just getting to know someone, or getting to know a woman and seeing what's inside of her head. Really, just talking, hearing her thoughts and opinions about certain things. Some things I may not agree with, or some things I do agree with, and having a back and forth against. Some people are not open to being disagreed with, or don't want to hear certain things, which is, to me, not a very attractive quality, but it is what it is. So, especially if someone wants to talk to me about politics, since I had to literally deal with it on an everyday level, and they want to keep saying something that's literally just know for a fact it's not true, and don't want to hear anything else. It's like, okay. But yeah, that's pretty much what I had planned for this show, and yeah, definitely had fun doing this. And again, see me back next week, and by the end of December, you will know whether or not I'm going to keep doing this. And everyone, hope you enjoy your upcoming week, and I will see you next weekend. Stay smooth.